Well, CrossWinds, I'm so glad that you're joining us today, tonight, whenever you're watching this for what I think is a really important Zoom call that I'm on here with some people from our church, and I'll introduce them in a second. But just to kind of set some context for this, um, as we've gone through this pandemic and the shutdowns and the fear that has gripped the United States over the last 14 months. What's come with that is a wave of hate crimes and incidents targeting Asian Americans. And some of those that were prosecuted as hate crimes involve uh, women who've been hit in the head. I think of a woman in the Bronx who was hit in the head with an umbrella while people, uh, you know, hurled at her Asian American insults or comments. I think of other incidents that maybe didn't even result in official charges, but that contained racist slurs. Uh, Researchers are saying they've seen a trend of increasing hate crimes and hateful incidents targeting Asian Americans during the pandemic. This is not, just one person from one political party, but I think people have been able to see that journalists have been seeing this and other kind of community members have been documenting this. In fact, the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University released some findings just in March, a few months ago, that showed hate crimes against Asian Americans spiked 149% between 2019 and 2020, even though hate crimes overall declined in the nation, but they were up 149% against Asian Americans. A different group, Stop AAPI Hate, cataloged nearly 3,800 hateful incidents, which when we say incidents, it's not limited to crimes. They cataloged over 3,800 in the first year of the pandemic. By the way, when we say AAPI, that stands for Asian American and Pacific Islander, if you weren't aware of that. And most of those 3,800, those incidents were targeted toward women. Okay, in addition to all of that, there is great evidence that these incidents may be way undercounted. So we thought it was important as people who follow Jesus and who have been told we're supposed to love our neighbor and love the stranger among us and even love our enemies. We're supposed to love everybody. We thought it was important as a church that we talk a little bit about what is going on and maybe most significantly, what is happening that is causing fear and understandable concern, even in the people of our own congregation. And then talk a little bit about what it means for us to be the congregation of Jesus to them. And we have got two people who are joining me tonight for this Zoom call. Tim and Nancy Yuen, thank you guys for being here with us. And I'm honored that you would come and share a little bit of your story. And I'm honored that you would be willing to be vulnerable with us and share some of what's going on in your life. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for having us.
I'll say this for you. We talked a little bit beforehand about what we're going to talk about, but we didn't say this. I would imagine you both would want me to say you don't speak for all Asian Americans, that you speak for your experience, and that's enough. We just want to hear your experience. And Nancy, we've had a chance to talk a little bit over email and over the phone. Can you just share a little bit of what some of your fears are right now?
Yeah, sure. So you're absolutely right. I think each person's individual experience is unique and that has to be honored. And for me, as an Asian American woman, have been born in the East Coast and, grown up in the United States all my life, for the first time, I'm scared. For the first time, I'm afraid to go out. I'm already a really, I would say, extreme introvert, and I don't go out normally. But now, when we go to family dinners, family lunches, even just recently, like our trip to Napa, I stay in the car. And that is especially so now because of the statistics that you just mentioned.
Mm.
So,
Yeah. How about you, Tim? How are you feeling in the midst of all of this?
Yeah, it's scary. Every day you hear more and more stories. You may hear from family who have been affected by it. People at work talking about it. Yeah, it is scary. Just to go
Yeah.
outside and even go for a walk sometimes, or
Mhm.
if you're going to another city, um,
Yeah.
probably just it's better to stay in the car.
Wow. Tim and Nancy, first of all, you're not the first people in our congregation that I've heard that from.
Mhm.
And I'm so sorry that that's been your experience of late. And I know from the little bit we've talked, it's not just your experience of late, but that you've had some experiences of your own that are also playing into that fear. It's not as if COVID brought this on, although it's certainly escalated during COVID. But talk to us a little bit about what your experience of racism, of being treated poorly, has been.
Me go. Yeah, I guess mine is probably yeah, interesting. Just because so I grew up in the East Coast and I grew up in a really, really small suburb. It was primarily white. I was probably the school was only in my high school. Was only about 90 students, and then I had been there since elementary school. And so being one of the only Asians in the school, there were a handful there along with me, but really being the only one in a classroom is really eye-opening. And I think, everyone knows like children just don't have filters. And so they're picking up what they're learning from home. So when I was young, I would get asked, oh, do you know like Kung Fu? And do what this like food is? And, of course, like I would say yes, because, that's kind of the expected answer. I think the other thing that was so pointed was that it wasn't just from students, it was also from the teachers.
Mm,
Because if I struggled in a subject, it would be a question of, oh, well, why wouldn't you understand? And, for me, I actually was born and raised on the East Coast, but I actually didn't speak English until first grade. And so that was something eye-opening, for me is I had the answers in my head, but it just was really difficult to communicate. And especially, with math word problems are just already hard. And
yeah.
you throw in that English as a second language. And I would get pointed questions from teachers of, oh, you know what? Why don't you understand this? Because shouldn't you? And I never really understood that. And I told my parents, and they told me that's really wrong for them to say that because they're saying
Mhm.
it because you're Chinese. Um, and things of kind of like those microaggressions. And then one time, I had it directly, blatantly, verbalized and even just in my face of like someone trying to speak Chinese, and it didn't end well. It didn't end well for the other person, but I learned that, being aggressive wasn't the answer.
Mm.
And that was just kind of like the journey through like, childhood to adulthood of just, handling those microaggressions, handling those, I would say, unwanted looks and comments and side comments all the way up through COVID.
Yeah. So as you described that, obviously a lot of stereotyping that then went on as you were growing up. I imagine that's for you as well, Tim. Both of you guys experienced that. Um, you've got kids now. You worry about that?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
just remember as a kid in elementary school, those playground things that kids say.
Yeah.
I didn't think anything of it, thinking it was normal. But
Yeah.
them making fun of me being Asian, being Chinese,
Yeah.
it didn't bother me. But now looking back, I'm like, wow, that was really
Mm-hmm.
wrong. They didn't know it. Like you said, maybe they learned it from somewhere,
Somewhere.
Yeah.
somewhere. But I just kind of took it. And I just thinking back, I think I was colorblind at least until about maybe fifth grade or so.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
thinking about this, I just thought of a experience in like sixth grade. A friend that I thought was a friend, saw him in middle school. I haven't seen him all summer, and hey, and he's like, "What's wrong with you? You don't comb your hair?" I'm like, "Whoa! I thought you were like my buddy. We
Hmm.
knew each other before." And I still remember that to this day. I don't know if it's racist, you know, I don't know, but you know,
Yeah.
it was just odd. It was just
Yeah.
really, because he was with his cool friends, you know.
Yeah. 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 And obviously now where this becomes, all of those things are, first of all, I'm sorry that even those happened to you growing up, both of you. That's terrible. And then to fast forward to now where it's leading to hate crimes that would cause you to be afraid to get out of the car. Did you say you were afraid to get out of the car when you went to Napa most recently?
Yeah, I'm afraid to get out of the car just because of OCD issues, but especially now, I really don't want to get out of the car.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's when we're going out, doesn't matter where it is, Tim knows. Even just to kind of run an errand, I pretty much go where there's curbside service
Yeah.
because that way it's like minimal interaction.
I'm asking this because just as a white guy, I have never had that experience in our Tri-Valley, kind of Northern California Bay Area, where I've felt that. And I'm trying to help us, or put myself at least in your shoes as best I can. I had a meeting today with our county supervisor. We were just, me and a number of other pastors were meeting with him about what it means to help our community. It had nothing to do with this, but one of the things he mentioned is that Alameda County, I think I'm getting this right, is the fourth most diverse county in the nation. So when I hear that as a white person, I look around and I think, oh, we're incredibly diverse. Everyone's open and accepting and in love with each other. And even in the fourth most diverse county in the nation, you want to do curbside pickup because you're afraid of who you might run into that might not accept you, and that you might be another one of these statistics.
Exactly. You don't know, honestly, I feel there's little pockets, of this Tri-Valley area where you feel safe. And, we don't live in one of those pockets. And so I do agree that, typically this is safer. Like I feel safer than if I was on, in my hometown in the East Coast. But at the same time, you still hear you still experience some of those microaggressions. Like, I would say like when I was doing an errand, just north of where I live, it's very diverse, but, I was coughed on. And so it was in a really nice, place. And so you just don't know. And so now I've just kind of taken out that variable and just taken the safe assumption that it could happen and it would happen. So.
Oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That, all right. So let me ask you this. It seems to me that at times the conversation about the Asian American Pacific Islander experience of racism has gotten a little bit lost. Um, we've had lots of conversation about racism in this country. I'm 48, so as long as I've been alive, I can remember the conversation. I don't know that this has been a focus of it as much as maybe it needs to have been. How would you say the Asian American experience of racism is unique?
It is unique. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. It is unique because there's a history like deeply embedded in the history of the United States that I don't think we talk about. And I think as a culture and part of our heritage is that, we kind of just go and we want to just make peace. That is kind of the heritage and the way that, we were brought up. But I also think that we can't ignore the deep-seated acts of racism against Asians. And, it's starting to bubble up. This is not a new thing. Like COVID didn't bring up like all of these racist acts. They've been happening for a long time. They've been happening for, I would say decades. And I think it's about acknowledging that and acknowledging that there is an understanding that we all need to have, not just Asian Americans, but everybody from all ethnicities. And we need to recognize that this is a deep-rooted racist, situation that's been around for a long time. And it's getting to that root, whether it's Asians, whether it's Blacks, whether it's Hispanics, there is that deep-seated undercurrent of racism going on. And until we can address it, and until we can actually come and recognize it, none of this is gonna, improve. And I think that's what you're seeing right now, is that this is now starting to bubble up, and we're now seeing the effects of something that's been subdued for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah. There's all of a sudden, I want to say this real carefully, but permission given to have there be these overt acts that basically reflect something that internally or under the radar had been felt and aimed at for a very long time, and that's why in 1 year, an 150% increase can happen, because this was always there. Yeah.
Right. And people are frustrated. I feel like that's exactly it. Like, it's been happening for a long time. It's come up and there's permission. It's just, everyone is stressed. Everyone feels, they got shorted. And so I do believe, it's a combination of that stress. It's a combination of, hatred spreading hatred, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's infectious.
Yeah.
And, it only stops when you recognize it.
Yeah, and the acts have maybe escalated, but the hatred may have been there all along. And you and I were talking before this, Nancy, that this is not a new thing with COVID, and yet it has become a thing with COVID for sure. And I'll just tell you, it's baffling to me, because Nancy, were you born here? Or did you move here from China?
I was born and raised in
Born and raised here. Okay, and why anyone would ever think that you have anything to do with COVID-19 is mind-blowing to me. It makes no sense.
It doesn't make sense. And, I feel like, all of those, I would say, stereotypes and all those, I would say, hateful things about, what was said about, Chinese and the tying it with COVID was absolutely absurd. And I think everyone, as a human, you just want the path of least resistance for survival. And when you're trying to think about COVID in a very digestible manner, and you don't want to go through the effort of really thinking about it and thinking behind the science of it, think about, I would say, the process around it, you go and you make assumptions. And I think that's what's been happening.
Well, you and I were talking a few days ago. I imagine you are as upset about COVID as anyone. You are as affected by this as anyone is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let me ask.
There's no difference.
Yeah.
Except,
Well, go ahead. Except what?
Oh no, I was just going to say, except, as as someone who has OCD with germs, germophobia, and high functional autism, I love this. I don't love the attacks. And I think that's kind of like, led me into like a different stage of my faith, and something that's been, calling me into this special place where I've just been journeying. Like, it's taken my journey with God in a different path, and I love it. But yeah, like no one wants, like, the disadvantages of COVID. Yeah.
Tim, let me ask you this. All right. As you think about your fellow CrossWinds family being actively supportive in a moment like this, where there's all of this going on, these hate crimes, what does that look like in your mind for your CrossWinds Church family to be actively supportive right now?
I think just even reaching out and just saying, hey, how are you doing? We recently had a neighbor, ask me, and I was like, I was just really so touched, just, hey, how are you doing? And I'm like, oh, just hanging in there. And they're like, no, there's a lot of stuff in the news.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yes. I thought she was just asking how are we doing?
Yeah, right.
But she really wanted to know, how are you guys doing? And she's like, we got your backs. We love you.
Can I ask a question on behalf of white people who've not had to deal with this? How do we ask that question well? I'll say, our church is not as diverse as I wish it would be. And I think we spend a lot of time as pastors, believe it or not, and our team going, how do we broaden the diversity of people who call CrossWinds home? But I'd say the area where I think if there was an ethnicity we tend to be more diverse in, it is in the Asian American Pacific Islander demographic. Um, this last Sunday, I was standing on the bridge as people were walking over to our outdoor gathering. And I looked through the masks. All I could see is people's eyes these days. I looked in the eyes of so many of our churchgoers who are AAPI people, and I thought, besides saying good morning and welcome and so glad you're here, do I say, oh, I'm so sorry for what you're going through right now? How do you want people to reach out and see how you're doing? What's the right way to do that? I'm putting
Do
you on
it.
the
Like just do it. Like our neighbor, like that family wins like best neighbor of the year. Like we already love them, but they basically said, how are you guys? Like, and I feel like that's all you need to say.
Yeah.
Even, at work, people, just paying you and just saying, hey, are you okay? And just saying it, I think means the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, so don't be shy. And I feel it's not the time to be shy. Like we need allies. We
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
advocates.
Yeah. That's good. All right. What can we do in our personal lives? If that's corporately as a church, it's to come alongside you and let you know we're here and that we care about you. What does it look like in our personal lives? Everybody in this church has a coworker, a family member, a friend who is Asian American or Pacific Islander. What does it look like for us in our personal lives to stand for you in a moment where you feel like so many are standing against you?
I think just reaching out again, and
Mhm.
with coworkers reaching out to other coworkers. I know with remote, you don't have the hallway conversations anymore. You have the
Yeah.
break room conversation. It's very, very intentional now, and I think that means a lot more. If you ping
Mhm.
someone on Slack or email or something, you're reaching out. You're making an effort to reach out and say, hey, how's it going? Maybe it's
Yeah.
someone you haven't talked to in a year that you would always talk to in the break room.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. So again, the reaching out in your personal life. Can you think of Nancy, can you think of anything you'd add to that?
I would say, definitely speaking, just speaking out. And, like honestly, this happens everywhere. Like we both work in tech and it happens there. And it's about speaking up. Like when you see something and you see it happening, whether or not you're Asian, speak up. And
Mhm.
it doesn't matter, what they're going through. And statistics also show this too, is that when someone speaks up, it disperses any potential violent act. And
Mm.
so if you see it, even the microaggressions, like, because microaggressions will eat away at you, and over time, it does even more, damage than a violent act. And so if you see something, interrupt them. Interrupt and speak up, interrupt, question, educate, and echo. Like that's what we've been teaching our kids
Mm.
and our friends and even our parents, that when you see something, be aware, but also if you see this happening to someone else, make sure that you speak up and you interrupt whatever is going on
Mm.
before it kind of snowballs into something that you're going to regret being just a bystander.
I think that's great. You mentioned a few things and they ended with echo. Uh, what was that? Can you say that again
Sorry, I
for
went
us?
really fast.
No, say them
Um,
again. Say them again,
so
say it slower so we can catch it.
sure. So speak up, interrupt, question, educate, and echo. And, just it's simply, to give an example, if you see something, just interrupt whatever it is, use your voice and
When you
interrupt them.
see something, meaning when you see someone stereotyping
Yeah,
or
it can be
exhibiting
anything
prejudice
like,
or
yeah, like someone like, slacking you and saying, oh, like, don't you think this is funny? And it's racist. And you say, no, this is not funny. Like, why
Mhm.
would you send me this?
Yeah.
So kind of, or if you see something in the street and someone's literally about to get violent or is abusing somebody else because of obviously their race, interrupt, question, why are you doing this? Educate if you have that opportunity, and echo what you're seeing.
Speak up, interrupt, question, educate,
echo.
That will preach. As we say as pastors. That's really good. That's really helpful. I know both of you have told me you are open to talking to people in our congregation who themselves are Asian American and Pacific Islanders who might be fearful themselves right now, and or maybe they've been the targets of some of the very things we're talking about. And are you guys still open to that? Tell us more about what you'd be willing to kind of do. I mean, what does that look like you're open to talking to people, I think, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And just being there and listening and walking alongside them as they go through this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Tim's really good. And honestly, I think, this is like the way to kind of heal if that's happened to you is to talk about it. But I also offer that, to folks that are not Asian, because you may want to know, like, hey, how can I support my coworker, my friend, my neighbor? And it's okay to talk about it, because there are stereotypes that, we may have grown up with, myself included, that we need to kind of disrupt that cycle so that it doesn't spread. And it's okay to like talk to us, and we're open and we're accepting of that conversation, whatever it may be.
Yeah. All right, you guys, thank you for being open. And if people want to reach out to you, I think the best way to reach out to you is reach out to me. I'm going to give everyone my email address. It's Coli at crosswindschurch.org, all one word. And if you reach out to me saying, hey, I want to talk to Tim or Nancy, I will hook you guys up. I'll give them your info and figure out a way for you all to get a hold of each other.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
awesome.
Nancy,
thank you so much, Chris.
Oh man. And I think you're here Sunday, Nancy. Am I right? Are you
I am.
You're playing violin on the stage at Easter?
Yes.
So another way they could get a hold of you is just come on Easter and come catch you afterwards or something like that.
Happy to chat, yes.
She'll be the one with the violin. So you guys, I'm so grateful. And I know it's not easy to, record something where you're just opening up and kind of sharing your heart, your fears, your experiences. And there's a lot to that. So I'm grateful. And I hope it helps us as a church better understand what you're going through. Again, you don't represent everyone, but I think people will be able to resonate, many people, with a lot of your experiences and feelings right now. So can I pray for you before we shut this thing down? All right. God, I want to pray for Tim and Nancy, and God, I want to pray for everyone in our church who's a person of color that has ever felt this kind of discrimination, and God, anyone who's been the target of hate. We know that you call us to love, and I just, the more I see this in the world, the more I realize that it's an opportunity for the church to shine the light of who you are into the world and have people say, well, it doesn't happen there. That's a diverse place. That's a place where people are loved and cared for and welcomed and honored. And so I ask that as a church, we can be that. I pray for these two as they go through this season, the fear that they feel for themselves, their own family. God, I pray that you bring them calm in the midst of this, and you let them know that you are protecting them, and God, that their church family is behind them. God, I pray for everyone who's an Asian American, Pacific Islander in our church, that they would know that their family, their church family, is behind them right now. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you. I appreciate you doing this. Have a good night.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.